They're gonna blame this all on me.
Hello and welcome to another bad movie review. This time the town of Briarville, Missouri's in trouble and only one man can save it. That's right, we're looking at Ernest Scared Stupid. This is a 1991 film rated PG, runs about an hour and 31 minutes, directed by John Cherry III and starring, of course, comedic legend Jim Varney, as well as Eartha Kitt. The opening credits are pretty fun. It's mostly Ernest just running around being silly, and then we get into the movie itself and we open with a flashback of the local minister, I believe, banishing a troll after the townsfolk lure it with a child because trolls apparently abduct children. And the troll is banished in the roots of this tree, but a curse was placed on the town more or less and Francis Worrell's descendants, who are doomed to be dumber and dumber. So generations later, Ernest is a local garbage man, and he, as always, is coming up with some Rube Goldberg devices to try and make life easier and ends up making it more complicated for himself. And we do get a Star Wars reference of sorts when Ernest is trapped in his own garbage truck and it begins to compact on him as one of his devices inevitably backfires. And this is where we're introduced to some of the kids that are friends of his. That's Kenny and Elizabeth. Kenny's dad is the local sheriff, and there's a couple of bullies that are the mayor's kids. We'll get to them in a minute. Now, Ernest is supposed to clean up the yard of old lady Hackmore, but he doesn't really want to do that because it's sketchy out there and she thinks everything's art, so she scares him away constantly. And the old lady Hackmore is played by Eartha Kitt, who is probably best known to younger audiences as one of the people that played Catwoman in the 1966 Batman TV show. A lot of people don't even know that she was a singer. So the bullies come by the kids' haunted house that they're building. It's a sort of ramshackle little construct that no building permits were taken out on that, and obviously several OSHA violations were being ignored. If two preteen bullies can tear it apart, yeah, I think that had some safety concerns to begin with. But of course, one of the bullies is a big fat kid with a mullet, which is kind of a theme in the 90s with bullies. If you look at Bulk from the first season of Power Rangers, he kind of looked like this kid. Anyway, the kids go to complaining to Ernest, and he comes up with an idea to build a tree fort where they could do their haunted house thing. So he takes them out to the sketchy area of town that's just all trees and fog machines, and they build a tree house out of random junk they find laying around, which hopefully they all got their tetanus shots. But unfortunately, that tree is where the troll is hidden underneath, and of course, Ernest accidentally releases the troll. Now this is Trantor the Troll, played by Jonas Moscartolo, who unfortunately didn't seem to have very many credits, but did a really good job here. Well, the bullies are able to be repelled before the troll's released using dog food and really disgustingly moldy pizzas. But the troll begins hunting the local kids and turning them into little wooden figures to increase his power. Now he only needs to get 5 little wooden statues made by midnight on Halloween. That'd be midnight after 11:59 on Halloween, so technically November 1st, I guess, the strike of midnight. Now, old lady Hackmore tries to give Ernest a little boost of confidence, but yeah, Ernest is not the most competent of heroes, unfortunately, but flawed heroes are definitely a genre unto themselves, and Ernest is no quitter. Even though he's afraid, he manages to do what every good hero does and overcomes his fear to try and save his friends. We do have an appearance by one of the staples of the Ernest movies, Billy Byrge, who unfortunately passed away in January of 2025. He was in a significant number of Ernest projects, including the TV series that was short-lived for Saturday morning cartoon slots. So other than Ernest, he was the one character that seemed to be in the majority of the work of Ernest. There's a fun scene where the bullies get stuck in a troll trap that Ernest sets because he, of course, has to come up with the most convoluted ways possible to try and capture the troll. And the troll begins growing other trolls on the old oak tree that he was imprisoned in, and each time he collects one of the kids, little little troll eggs things that look vaguely like Brussels sprouts begin to get bigger and bigger. Now eventually leading to a bunch of trolls hatching around the tree. And apparently trolls are created fully clothed with weaponry. I don't know how that works, but I suppose it's supernatural magic that's beyond my understanding. You do get a lot of cliches from kids' movies around this time that end up in the film, which of course the kids are the ones that figure out how to stop the monsters. Although Ernest does kind of ultimately save the day, he's not exactly the driving force there. He's the one that ends up having to actually do the showdown at the end, which is good because this movie would have been really annoying if Ernest didn't actually have to resolve the problem. But the kids are routinely ignored by the adults, and they have to do a little bit of creative looting of a convenience store and come up with a few ideas of their own. Now, it is obviously a kids movie. It's rated PG, and it's largely a kid-driven story focusing on Kenny and Elizabeth and these bullies. So you do get the convoluted kid army that comes in to save the day. But overall, this is still kind of a horror film because you do have a lot of elements of a horror movie here. And a lot of it revolves around the general plot of a troll gets released and begins abducting children and turning them into little wooden figurines so you can spout a troll army that's going to lay siege to the town. That's the makings of a really good 80s style horror film. And of course you have a bumbling halfwit that has to save the day, which is most protagonists these days. So this is kind of ahead of its time in a way. Overall though, I love this movie. I have to admit that this is one of my favorite movies to watch around Halloween. Yeah, it's a kid's movie and it's got a lot of dumb kid stuff in it. It's too much kid stuff. It should have been more earnest and less annoying children. But it's a movie you can watch with like 10 to 12-year-olds, and unless they're these weak young kids that you've got now that are sheltered from anything remotely scary, they should be okay with it. Most of the trolls are silly looking, over the top kind of caricatures that look like something that you would see at like a Walt Disney horror exhibit. So it's not exactly unsafe for kids. I did find it funny that one of the kids is named Matt Murdock, and he was not blind or have any extrasensory abilities, which was really disappointing for him. So maybe it was before he went to get his law degree. But there were quite a lot of fun elements in here. There's a shockingly high body count at 18. And yeah, they're all trolls, but that's not the point, is it? Troll lives matter. I learned that from the internet. There's also some really funny sequences in here, some good dialogue. I actually laugh out loud a couple times in this. But if you don't like slapstick humor, this is definitely not going to be for you. And if you have issues with movies that have some so-called cultural insensitivities, you're probably going to have a few issues with this as well. Ernest is often portrayed as dressing up in different outfits that sort of represent other personalities of his, and that's mentioned in here that he has multiple personalities. He really doesn't. It's obviously a bit that he does, a comedy thing, but one of them is an Ottoman warrior who looks vaguely like a Mongol, and that probably isn't going to go over well with some of the more sensitive crowd that watches movies these days and reviews them. But if you're willing to be open-minded and have a sense of humor about pretty much anything, then this is not going to be that problematic. But I can see where a lot of so-called modern audiences are going to have problems with some elements of commentary in here. Plus, there's a couple of jokes that would be considered culturally insensitive now, but were perfectly acceptable back in the 90s when this was made. If you're willing to enjoy a little bit of slapstick humor and some funny one-liners, this might be for you. If you don't like slapstick humor, you're probably not going to like this. If you don't like movies with a goofy protagonist who is really, really silly, you're probably not going to like this then either. I think this movie gets a little bit of a bad rap from modern audiences, but again, they're offended by pretty much everything, so that's not too surprising. There were approximately 10 Ernest movies. I think I have all of them, so I will probably review all of them at some point, somewhere down the line, but by far this is probably my favorite. And this is one I watch pretty much every year around Halloween, so I'm always excited to bust out the DVD or the VHS of it and give it a watch. So I'm going to recommend it for sure. It's a fun, silly movie that a lot of people just don't like for no apparent reason, probably because they hate fun. It is a bit of a dark movie, so probably not suited for younger kids. They might get a little freaked out by the main troll, and they may not understand some of the references or a few of the things that happen happen, might get a little frightened by it. But overall, for like the 10 to 14 demographic, it'd probably fit in just fine, and they won't get too scared by anything that's going on. So a cult classic, and if you're a slapstick fan, you probably should find some entertainment here, and hopefully you enjoy it as much as I did. But that's going to do it for this one. Thank you so much for listening and supporting the channel. If you enjoyed the episode, please hit the like button and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss future reviews. If you'd like to help the channel out in other ways, links are in the description to various support methods. And as always, we hope to see you on the next one.